Okay, now let's start chapter 8. Anu is an experienced business analyst who's working on a project where senior management are looking for her input on the replacement of an existing solution. She's identified the fact that the solution has reached the end of its life. What recommendation should Anu make to senior management? So we already know it's reached the end of its life. So first, what task is she in? Which of the 5 tasks is this?
The assess solution limitation.
If she's making a recommendation,
Oh, recommend actions to increase solution
Yeah,
value,
recommend
but
action.
it's
Yeah.
it's okay. Obviously, there was a limitation in the solution, so you're right there. But she's jumped on down to the solution, the task. So the possible answers: retire the solution, identify additional capabilities, make organizational changes, or reduce complexities of the interface.
A.
Yeah,
Reach
I
life
agree.
is
Okay.
I would say A.
I don't know whether A is too obvious.
that's it. Seems like a trick.
Doesn't it?
Trick question. Yeah, there you go.
They're looking for her input on the replacement of it, and she wouldn't identify additional capabilities. We're not talking about organizational changes, and we're not talking about complexity. So A seems pretty obvious. Let's test
Yeah.
it. And you are correct.
Yay.
Sometimes it is just that easy.
Let's see what 8542 says, because I think that's a goofy, contentless question.
Do you
It's a
want to
goofy
test
one.
that, or do you want us to go on?
I'm looking up 8542.
8542 is going to be
Recommendations. Do nothing. Organizational change. Reduce, eliminate, avoid. Yeah, I guess. Oh, retire is on there. Retire the solution.
yeah.
Last one on the list.
So, quick question.
8542.
By the way, I have a presentation I've given where I talk about like a dozen different reasons why you might do a project. These are some of them,
Okay,
but not all.
So for this task, I just put, there's the elements in the chat, and the whole list of recommendations is in there. Retire is one of them.
Right.
Do nothing is one of them too. Babok really likes the do nothing one. What would happen if you did nothing? Okay, Ed is working on making recommendations to increase value of a solution. He has discovered that different stakeholder groups may have common needs that can be met with a single solution. What recommendation is the best option for Ed? So again, there's a solution, he's done an evaluation, and there's a recommendation. So we're still in the same task. So for this situation, would it be identify additional capabilities, retire the solution, eliminate redundancy, or avoid waste? So here's the key. Different stakeholder groups can be met with the same solution. So which one does that meet the definition of?
C,
Eliminate redundancy. Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody agree on C?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you are correct. Look at you guys go. Brenda has completed her assessment of the solution limitations and enterprise limitations following analysis of performance measures. What guidelines and tools will she use in her next task? So what is her next task? If she has done solution limitations, enterprise limitations, and analyzed the performance measures. What's the next task?
Command action.
Okay.
Value.
So
Yeah.
So guidelines and tools for that one, would it, and the definition of recommended actions to increase solution value is understand the factors that create differences between potential value and actual value and recommend a course of action to align them. With that goal in mind, would she be using business objectives, current state description, solution scope, change strategy, business objective, change strategy, solution scope, or business objectives, current state description, solution scope.
D as in Disney.
B. D is in
No.
D.
Yeah.
D as in Disney.
I couldn't think of another D word.
Dog probably would have been
David, I
better,
don't
but
Elsa.
Okay. Everybody like D? Let's test
Yeah.
it.
That's good.
These are the guidelines and tools for recommend actions to increase solution value, task which Brenda will be performing next. You guys rock. What should not be considered when evaluating whether or not a solution should be retired or replaced? So if we're going to evaluate if it should be retired or replaced, what task are we in?
Recommendation.
Recommendations.
recommend.
Assess
Okay.
solution, give recommendation.
Very good. So what should not be considered? Would it be sunk cost, future investment required, opportunity cost, or necessity?
Some cost.
A sunk.
Sunk cost is sunk. Sunk
Yeah.
cost is not a factor to be considered since the money has been spent and cannot be recovered. I realized today, whenever I was saying the same thing to my other class, that the BABOK doesn't talk about it like this, but in the real world, we talk about sunk costs being money spent. There are situations where you have spent money on something and there's a warranty or a guarantee that you can recoup some or all of that money if it doesn't meet whatever standards the contract said. In that case, it's not literally sunk cost anymore. So you got to consider that. Okay, you're a BA trying to understand how the organization structure will be impacted by a solution. Here's the key here. Organization structure. What do you need to assess? So what task are we in?
It's about enterprise. I don't remember exact wording.
Assess enterprise limitation.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one.
So what do you need to assess? The formal reporting structures, alliance and matrix reporting, the organizational hierarchy, or formal and informal relationships?
D.
These questions sounds very repetitive, like last week.
Yeah, they
Isn't it?
do.
They
Uh-huh.
They're
might,
just
we might have a few repeats. I mean, we have 120 questions in here and it's divided into 6 different knowledge areas. So there's chances are we're going to have some repeats. So we like formal and informal relationships.
Mhm.
We have learned it last week, yeah.
Yep. Because we learned. We learned. Okay. K is a BA measuring the performance of a solution. Complaints about the solution have been increasing from end users. She went into the project archives to obtain how the original stakeholders defined acceptable performance. Those criteria didn't seem to be the cause of the complaints, however. Among other things, stakeholders weren't happy with all the overall maintainability of the solution. What else could assist Kay in her analysis? You're right. We got that this last week, but we're going to do it
Yep.
again because some of these folks weren't here. Okay, so what task is she doing?
Where's Bob?
Where's Bob?
Where's Bob? Bob told us the answer last week.
Yeah.
So, but what task is she doing?
Doing that.
She's measuring the performance, so
Yeah, solution
the-
performance.
yes.
Okay. So what else could help her? Would it be stakeholder requirements, understanding how the original project objectives map to the business objectives at the time? Perhaps the business changes and the solution is no longer viable. Functional requirements, or understanding how the original stakeholders define the expected characteristics of the solution.
D.
So, I'm sorry, say it again.
It's D as in dog.
Okay.
Understanding the original
Why do
stakeholders.
you like D?
From the
Because
last
if
time.
she's yeah, because the last time. Because if she went back into the archives
Mm-hmm.
to look it over, and the maintainability wouldn't have been there. They wouldn't have known that. But they still would have seen, I mean, she would have seen that the criteria still met the same things. It's just that the maintainability is, you
Right.
don't know that.
And why do we know it's not functional requirements?
Because maintainability is a non-functional requirement.
Right.
That's right. And are we talking about business objectives?
no,
No.
Are we? Okay, so we think it's D. Let's test D.
because
And the answer is, this is the definition for non-functional requirements analysis technique. The availability, capacity, maintainability, speed, etc. of the solution. As Bob wisely pointed out last week, there is a whole list of things that are non-functional requirements. It's great to look at to give you ideas of, do I need to write a requirement about this? The key to it is figuring out your top percentage that you need to write the requirements about and leaving the rest alone, because you don't need a requirement for every single non-functional, but you might find some on there that you hadn't thought about. Okay, a solution architect has a paper prototype of the system for which you are a BA. She asks you to evaluate the solution to ensure that it meets the defined measurements before she passes it on to developers, as she's going on vacation and won't be available for rework. I don't think we can let her leave. How do you respond? So she wants you to evaluate a paper prototype to see if it meets the defined measurements. So what task is she asking you to do?
um, assess solution limitation.
Assess.
We
Yep.
don't have a limitation yet. A limitation would be a problem.
Ooh.
We want to see if it meets defined measurements.
So analyze performance then?
Okay,
Performance analysis?
I think you're probably right. So we're talking paper prototype, and she wants us to analyze the performance of it. How do you respond? You advise her that your first evaluation is scheduled after development, and will let her know the results. You advise her to talk to quality assurances. They will be conducting the tests. You trace the requirements to her design to provide confidence that the system will work. You suggest she build a working prototype for evaluation purposes before development.
D.
D sounds logical.
Yeah, we say D2.
We can't measure a paper prototype, can we?
No.
Why not? I mean, can't we consider it as a partial solution or a low fidelity?
It would be a low fidelity prototype, but we can't measure the performance because the performance would be based upon the software, the UI, the back end, all that stuff. You can't measure it, it's not built. So we want her to build a working prototype that we can actually perform with.
Okay, my question for understanding. So we are going to evaluate the solutions. So, and also we learned from the BABOK that evaluation of the solutions are not necessarily to evaluate the complete solution, even if it is a component of the solution. So can't we consider the paper prototyping as a component of the solution and evaluate it?
We can, but here's the key. We want it to meet defined measurements. So defined measurements in this case would be things like the screen will return the notes within 3 seconds. You can't do that with a paper prototype unless somebody's switching papers in front of you, and they're not going to be doing that for all your customers.
The BABOK says that prototypes or proof of concepts for solution evaluation have to be working, but limited. And I don't think a paper prototype is working.
Exactly right.
Not working.
Yes, Bob.
I was going to say that measurements have to be of something that's working, like tracing the requirements, make sure you have all the nouns and verbs. So you have all the right stuff the solution needs, but then when you measure it, you have to build it. And even though you do a prototype that's different, it might give you an idea that it's going to work, but will it work under load? Will it work with a certain number of users? Will it work under certain hardware or in certain other conditions? So It
Right.
gives you some insight, but it's not the full answer.
I agree. I agree. While I switch screens, I'm going to tell y'all about one of the most successful prototypes I ever used was paper. And we literally put screenshots, mock screenshots, we called them wireframes way back then, in a 3-ring binder and hung them over a monitor and had the users a touch screen, and the user was checking in test tubes of blood, and they had to scan it, and then they had to hit the screen and do stuff, and depending on what they touched on the screen, we would turn it to the right page. And we discovered placement of buttons and missing buttons and all kinds of stuff, but it was their interaction with that stupid piece of paper, turning the pages. It was very effective, but I was impressed at how well we did. It was fun. Okay, how should solution options that offer potential capabilities above and beyond those identified in the original business case be handled? This is your key. It's above and beyond those identified. Be handled. So,
B.
I'm sorry.
I think the answer is B for bot.
Okay, documented and stored in a way that's easily accessed for similar initiatives. Okay, the other options, A, would be identified even when not deemed immediately useful if the organization anticipates using them in the future. They also need to be documented and stored in a way that's easily accessed for similar initiatives. They could be ignored. Those were not part of the business case and not relevant to the proposed solution, or they're totally ignored. The term for these capabilities is gold plating. So Rejoice thinks that B is the correct answer. Rejoice, why do you like B most?
I eliminated C and D. And I felt that it's important to document for future projects.
Okay. I also like it that it's made accessible for other similar initiatives.
Right.
My
Everybody
PMP says D as in dog, but I know this isn't the PMP.
Yes.
I guess the question would be, with waterfall, yeah, you still shouldn't do it. But if it's agile, there is no stop to adding requirements. So, and it doesn't give that context. So I don't know what the best answer is.
This could also be called scope creep, but with this answer right here, it basically says we're not planning on doing it in this project necessarily, but it's being documented so that we still have that record for later. So let's test B. Okay. So according to the BABOK, we identify them even when they're not immediately useful if we're going to use them in the future. And it talks about it mainly being true for COTS applications, which is commercial off the shelf, a package that you buy. You're not doing the development yourself. But I agree, Rejoice. It seems like documenting and storing it should be something we consider, but just identifying it is really the focus for this question. Did you have something, Bob?
I was going to say, when you think about traceability, it's to make sure you meet all the needs that are identified and avoid doing any work that is not necessary. Now, if you identify a certain set of needs and you get a packaged solution, which a COTS application would be, it's likely to be a superset of what you need, but that isn't necessarily. I think this question's a little unfair. It points you to the right place in the book, which is good, and makes you think, which is good. The way you guys have thought about it is perfect. Again, I think there would be no questions on the actual exam that would be this confusing. I will also say that my speech has gotten so bad that the AI is flashing up a warning telling me I may no longer be speaking English. So hopefully you all can't still follow me.
Actually, Bob, I get that at almost every meeting, and I think it's not your speech. I think it's AI. It just
I think it's
like goes
AI.
out.
Yeah, it happens.
So you don't get credit for that yet, dude. You just keep going. Okay. When the techniques of process modeling, observation workshops, document analysis, and organizational modeling have the most value when assessing enterprise-related obstacles to realizing solution value. So enterprise-related obstacles is another way to tell us which task it is. Which task is this?
Enterprise limitations.
Enterprise limitations, obstacles, mistakes, problems, they're all words for limitations. So when would it be most value? Would it be, well, would that be with an enterprise cultural assessment, assessing enterprise limitations, assessing solution limitations, or stakeholder impact analysis?
Well, I will choose the easy way and go with the task itself, meaning B, like boy.
I'm wondering if we had gone through this question last week as well.
Yes, we did. And
Yeah,
it's
See?
I feel like
stakeholder
stakeholder.
impact analysis, but the reasoning is because it's observation and workshops, because those are stakeholder.
Yeah, it's all people related.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we did
Oh.
the similar mistake last week.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
So let's test this. All of these techniques would give insights to which stakeholder groups' roles are impacted by a solution.
Right. They're talking roles. Yep.
This is a correct but too broad of an answer. We've got to go into the not the task itself, but what we're actually getting out of doing these things.
Yep.
But you know what? You just learned. You're not going to make that mistake ever again.
hopefully
Ever.
we're going to ask this question during the exam.
We'll just get a higher
Exactly,
grade.
right?
Yeah, it should be identical.
Identical, yes.
Okay, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. He's given us A, B, C, and D, guys. That way we're not making up our own words for it.
Like Disney thing.
Sierra discovered that an internal audit team performed audits the last calendar week of each month. The organization operates at a frenetic pace, which means frantic, the last week of each month to meet production goals. What might Sierra further investigate as a concern? So the first 3 weeks, they're doing fine. The last week, everybody is so busy, and that's when the audit is done. Maybe not great. Let's go into the answers. Perhaps the entire facility doesn't need to be audited each month, and that sample of departments would be sufficient. Perhaps the fact that the audits are completed each month is too often. Perhaps bi-monthly or quarterly makes more sense. Why the frenetic pace can't be spaced out across the month given the production goal. Perhaps the timing of the audience may have a negative impact on the outcome. What's the next thing after she figures this out, what she should be looking at next or investigating the possibility of? I'll tell you, I don't like this one because
No.
that's bigger than what she's focusing on, right? Maybe it's
Right.
true, but that's not what she's trying to address. So it comes down to the frequency of the audit or the timing of the audit.
It's got to be one of A or B, I would believe, because the frequency, maybe it doesn't need to be, maybe I kind of like A because the sampling of the departments would be sufficient. It doesn't have to be everything.
Let me suggest that we take a page out of Irina's presentation. If they're doing audits, there's probably a regulatory reason for it. That probably
Right.
means that we can't decide it's going to be different than it is.
Exactly.
That's true.
It's got to be monthly, and it's got to be every department.
I like D because it doesn't actually say that there's a problem yet. So D says, hey, let's look and see if there's a problem before. Why make a change if
That's
if
true.
it's not a
Yeah.
problem.
And
Okay.
there
agree
are
with that.
many reasons to do audits. They can be external or internal.
Okay.
So you have more leeway over when you do internal audits.
Okay. Well, let's test D. Maybe we can learn that we were wrong. The timing of the audits appears to be most problematic given the information in this scenario. Let's try one of these. There is no evidence that the volume or sample size related to measurement activity is an issue. So,
It's just the time.
Thea, could you also check why C is not correct?
good question, but not the best answer of those provided.
Okay.
So this is talking about fixing the whole company. And what we're talking about is the audits
Yeah.
coming up with worse results because of the time of month that it is.
The question is about the audits, but as a separate answer, you want to fix the process so that you are not going crazy at the end of every month.
Right.
Ideally.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because if we are saying the audit is mandatory, you can't really do anything about it, but you can do something about your own processes.
Right. I agree that if we were in a continuous improvement organization, that this would probably be on the list of things that we talk about. Why do we have a fanatic pace at the end of the month? You know, what are we doing that we have to suddenly rush and do overtime or whatever? Yes, Bob.
Here's a pro tip. You should always be in a continuous improvement organization.
You
Always.
should. Honestly, you should be a continuous improvement individual. You work on your own improvement all the time. Find what you can do better and prioritize it and move forward. Okay, I get to read a long one. I'm so excited. Lewis has been asked to complete a post-implementation evaluation of a new automated system that was recently installed. After reviewing the project and the actual performance statistics, he saw that actual performance was better than the metrics that had been defined. Yet there were frequent complaints from end users and managers about its usefulness. His final recommendation was that the system be eliminated. Which of the following might have prompted this recommendation? So he's made a recommendation, so we know we're in the fifth task. So what might have prompted his recommendation? Although the performance was actually better than the defined performance metrics for the solution, many of the stakeholders complained about the slow system response time. Although the performance was actually better than the defined performance metrics for the solution may not have addressed the business need for which the project was undertaken and was redundant. The original cost-benefit analysis completed during the project initiation was faulty and the forecasted benefits were inflated. Although the performance was actually better than the defined performance metrics for the solution, the end users complained about the new business processes that were put in place in conjunction with the new system. So what did they actually complain about? They complained about its usefulness.
So maybe B, Bravo.
Yeah, I agree with Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Mhm.
Okay.
It is a typical high performance, low value.
You've been reading books, dude.
Yeah.
You guys made an old soldier very happy.
So even though the scenario can be rare, it's still possible. I've seen it done. They implemented something nobody needed. It was miserable. Which task of a solution evaluation is responsible for identifying the root causes for underperforming an ineffective solution and solution components? So we've got a solution that has issues. So is it assess solution limitations, financial analysis, assess enterprise limitations, or measure solution performance? We've got a solution. So we know the word is solution, right? We
Yeah.
got a problem. We know the root word is limitation. Do y'all agree?
Yes.
Alpha.
Assess solution limitations.
Ta-da! It is just that easy sometimes. The sponsor believes that cultural assessments are of little value. What would be a compelling way to state the case for their need? We know which one we're in. We're in enterprise limitations because that's where you do your cultural assessments.
Yep.
A cultural assessment will determine if the existing organization is capable of accepting a solution. If culture changes are needed, it will judge the organization's ability and willingness to adapt to those changes. It will judge the organization's ability and willingness to adapt to cultural changes required for stakeholders to readily adopt solutions. A cultural assessment will determine if the existing organization is capable of accepting a solution, or it is the most cost-effective way to develop a communication plan that will ensure awareness and understanding of the solution.
A.
I'd say A.
Yeah, I agree with A.
Alpha.
Correct. This is our definition of what its value is. Very good. Brenda's developing a plan to measure solution performance. So what task is she in?
Measure solution
Measure
performance.
In addition to the measures themselves, what are other considerations that are part of the plan? Would it be volume or sample size, frequency and timing, currency? Volume or sample size, frequency and timing, data collection tool? Volume or sample size, currency, frequency and timing, currency, and data collection tool? Okay, let's start with this. Is volume and sample size part of our list?
Yes.
Yes, I believe.
Okay, so we can eliminate D. Is data collection tool part of our list?
No.
So we can eliminate B. Is frequency and timing part of our list?
Yes.
Yes.
So we can eliminate C.
A.
We are
gotta be
left
A.
with A. That is the list. You got 4 things. Is it 4? Volume or
Wow.
sample size, frequency and timing, and currency. You've got 2 combos and 1 single.
Yeah.
So 5 things. And they really are 5 different things, even though that there's not commas between them all. Any questions on this? How to measure solution performance? Okay.
Actually, I
Balance
have a
of-
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Currency, measurements taken. Oh, if it's current, I'm like, what does money have to do with this?
Yeah,
That's
not
like, okay.
not money.
Are the measurements current? Have they been taken recently?
I don't know that I've ever heard that word in that context before. Currency.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's odd. Okay, got it. Is it current? I'm gonna write that
Is
down.
it current? Are the measurements reliable? Are they reasonably recent? I'll say
That makes sense. I'm just like, why does this all talking about money? That's obviously not right. It doesn't matter if it's in pounds or dollars.
Yeah, it's lira. Okay.
Recency might be a better word. Or
Yeah, recency.
Yeah.
I agree.
We are all about to get this one right. Because I think this one's scarred.
Oh yes, this one we know. This one has been like
Talked about
underlined.
this today.
Well,
We
okay.
did talk about this today.
Which one is it?
Trend D.
It's trend.
Yeah, D is a delta.
I was trying to explain to someone how they had to know the Babok language, and I had a screenshot of this question, and I showed it to her today.
Yes.
I am so proud of all of us for that reason. Thank you so much. Okay, what term describes the money and effort already committed to an initiative? You already
Slam
B.
Sunk cost.
C.
C.
C. Sunk
sunk
cost.
cost. It's already committed. Can't get it back.
I wish Watermark could not eliminate those questions that we have already practiced. I'm not sure if there's any option. Do you have an option there?
Yeah,
You might
yeah.
have.
We're gonna get like
No.
a 90 today. It's all right.
We're gonna do great.
Yeah, we are rocking a good score today. Yes.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of analyzing performance measures? So what's the purpose? So remember those little definitions, the goals of each one? It's asking you which one it is. Providing understanding of the performances of the solution in order to pass potential audits. Is that it?
No.
Doesn't sound good.
Nope, not it. Prepare clients for upcoming changes based on results of measuring the solution's performance. Is that it?
No.
No,
No,
prepare.
not it. Provide insights into the performance of a solution in relation to the value it brings.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that one. See.
I like that one.
Does sound pretty good. Let's check the other one. On the actual test, I'm going to tell you, I want you to read all the answers, even if you think you found the right answer.
Yeah.
Read all the answers.
The next one might be even better.
Assist in developing the project schedule once it's been determined that changes are required.
No, I still go back to C.
So we're good with C.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Who are the stakeholders that contribute to measuring solution performance? So we want to know who the stakeholders are that are in this one task. Let's talk about the purpose of measuring solution performance. Define performance measures and use the data collected to evaluate the effectiveness of a solution in relation to the value it brings. So it's those people that are involved in that process. Would it be the domain SME, documentation SME, regulator, sponsor, user experience expert? Would it be the supervisor, director, end user, domain subject matter expert, customer, sponsor, developer? Would it be the UI expert, developer, regulator, documentation SME, supervisor, and tester? Or would it be the customer, domain subject matter expert, project manager, sponsor, and regulator? I think we can eliminate some of these. Let's eliminate first.
I think Irina last week said the director sounds weird.
Yeah, it's
Yep, the
supervisor
director.
sounds weird. So C, eliminate, and
Okay.
whether and B. Yeah.
And there is no
then
user experience expert.
Ah,
And
yeah.
there is no documentation subject
Yeah.
matter
Documentation.
expert.
Mhm.
I think we found our answer.
D.
So for the purpose, I said customer, domain SME, project manager, sponsor, and regulator would be involved in that, right?
All credit goes to last week.
You're starting to scare me. No, good way.
Oh, somebody's wanting in. Let's let them in. Roberta is joining us. Yay. Okay. Finn is a BA working on a newly implemented logistics process for a packaging supply company. He began gathering performance metrics on such things as how long the process took versus how long to get output from one area to another, defects in the output, duplicate steps, number of complaints, etc. The department supervisor complained to Finn that gathering these statistics was a waste of time. She said she would rather he spend his time gathering requirements for automation to support the process. What rationale does Finn offer for his activities? So he's gathering all these statistics. What task is he doing?
Performance metrics on such things.
Yeah.
Performance metrics.
Is
be
he
solution
in
performance-
measure solution
measuring?
performance?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's working to understand and validate the value that was delivered by the implemented solution. The gathered measurements will support the automation project. The information is needed as inputs into a SWOT analysis for the new automation project, or he needs to keep an eye out for defects so he can address them in a timely manner to ensure customer satisfaction. So
say-
can we eliminate D?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
And we can
E,
eliminate
maybe
C.
also.
Okay. We're not making a SWOT analysis. So how about B?
I think I will say A instead, but
I would say A because he's
You
working
think
to
A is the
understand
right
and
answer?
validate.
Why do we like A?
because he can track it back to the requirement. I think so.
Okay. Any other votes?
Because that is the definition of the first task, perhaps.
Yes. Ben is gathering the actual metrics that describe the performance of the solution in order to measure and analyze solution performance. Outside the BABOK, we say bad process automated is a bad automated process. Doesn't get better because it's automated. I have literally seen companies automate processes just because it's like, oh, we got to automate it because it'll make it better. Doesn't make it better if it's already bad.
Mhm.
Which input describes the value that may be realized by implementing the proposed future state? It can be used as a benchmark against which solution performance can be evaluated. So, what task are we doing here? The value that may be realized by implementing the proposed future state. This is a definition. This isn't a task.
Right.
So, is it the definition for business objectives, relationship management, solution performance measures, or potential value?
Potential value.
Potential, yeah, the yep.
Potential value. Y'all
It
might be
even
ready
says
for more chapters
describes the
after
value.
this. Y'all are doing really, really good. After a long and challenging project, Roger has to determine if an enterprise is able to adapt to or effectively use the solution. What does Roger need to do in order to accomplish this goal? So, what task is Roger doing?
Enterprise.
Enterprise limitations.
Yes,
Yep.
enterprise
What is
limitations.
the enterprise
He's
limitation?
determining if an enterprise is able to adapt or effectively use the solution. So does he need to conduct an operational assessment, conduct a cultural assessment, assess the enterprise structure, or perform a stakeholder impact analysis?
Cultural assessment.
Yeah, I want to say B.
B.
Oh,
Ooh,
Did I choose the
operational.
right one that y'all chose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I thought that could have said adapt, like
Yeah, if they're able to
if they're able
adapt.
to adapt. Yeah.
If the enterprise is able
he
to
needs to
adapt
conduct an
to.
operational assessment to see if the enterprise is
Mm,
able to adapt to or effectively use the solution.
mm.
What does 844 say? 'Cause I would
8444
have guessed B.
is operational assessment.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
if you got this one wrong, go back and look at the difference between a cultural assessment and an operational assessment. Okay. Okay, let's move on. What output has a business analyst developed when they can provide a description of the current limitations of the enterprise, including how the solution performance is impacted by the impacting the enterprise? So a description of this plus this. So what task is it that they're doing to get to this?
Enterprise limitation.
Right.
Okay, if it's enterprise limitation,
Yeah.
enterprise limitation. This is the output from the assess enterprise limitations task. I think it's important that y'all know that the purpose of each task, it needs to be basically memorized, because you're going to see multiple purposes and then they're going to say, pick the one that goes along with the task listed. You also need to know the purpose of each output because they're going to, and the output name. Okay, we are ahead of schedule, I think. Ben isn't sure that the data generated from the performance measures is accurate, so he is hesitant to take further action. What could Ben do to understand if he can rely on the data generated by performance measures? So if he's looking at data generated by performance measures, what task is he doing?
The solution
Analyzing
performance.
Analyze performance
Analyze
measures.
performance measures.
Yeah.
Yep. So what could he do to understand if he can rely on them? Analyze the data from several different aspects to ensure data integrity. Analyze the source of the data to ensure source integrity. Monitor the data for another month to see if the same results continue to be generated or test the results to see if they can be repeated or reproduced?
A.
D. D.
Yeah,
I was gonna say D. Yeah.
Delta.
Goodness, we're
Why-
across
why
the
do you think
board.
I did
Okay,
D?
let's talk through it. Is there a way to test the results to see if they can be repeated? And would that tell us if he can rely on them?
Yeah, that's
I
true.
would think so.
Okay. How about monitoring the data for another month, which gives you a standard time to see if the same results continue to be generated? That's kind of the same thing as D, isn't it?
Yeah. They're kind of two of the same.
Except this has the test part and this has monitor. So let's keep
Hmm.
going. Analyze the source of the data to ensure source integrity. I don't even quite know what that
Don't need
means.
source integrity in the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, that one I
And
think.
analyze the data from several different aspects to ensure data integrity. What would that, how would you do that?
You'd have to.
So why don't we test C, and if we get it wrong, we'll learn.
Okay.
Okay.
It is D.
So the problem with this answer is that if the data is unreliable, it may be consistently unreliable,
Right.
you know? And so testing the results, the accuracy of performance measures is essential to the validity of their analysis. BAs test and analyze the data collected to ensure their accuracy and reliability. The results of performance measures should be reproducible and repeatable.
Okay.
If I were to
Yeah,
tell you the
actually,
mechanics of how to do this, I would struggle.
Well,
Because-
I only went with that answer because it's about performance data. So I'm a former database administrator, so I love data. So originally when I read it, I thought it was saying, you know, if the data is bad in a system, if someone just puts in bad data to a system, you're going to repeat, it's going to be reproducible that the bad data comes out. But
Mhm.
this is actually talking about performance measures. So you could say if it's 80 degrees, it slows the server down. You just make it 80 degrees again. If it slows down, that's good. If you make it 90 and it's even slower, then you see that might be the cause, and that's how you test.
Correlation, yeah.
Because I've also done hardware support.
You
in the past, so
also,
I'm drawing from everything.
That is brilliant. Thank you for explaining it that way.
I've been
Yeah.
an independent B&B agent, and I have built things I learned from that and from my own work into my framework. And you have to think about the whole chain of custody of the data. Is it authoritative? Is it accurate? Is it self-consistent? Does it make sense? Was it collected the correct way or consistently? What are the potential sources of error? So I know when the military, specifically the Navy and Marine Corps, records data for aircraft operations and maintenance, flying the flight comes before getting the data right. If it's a question of logging the data or flying the plane, they'll fly the plane, piss on the data. And you as an analyst have to understand that. And it gets worse in a combat situation, no doubt. And that's the right way for them to think about it. So you have to think about the entire chain of where the data comes from. And these different options actually get at that. But the question is kind of doing a meta thing. And so the logic you talked about for maybe getting just because data is consistent doesn't mean it's right. It's really the purpose of the question. So it's not really the knowledge, it's kind of a logic buried in the question itself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, which stakeholders are identified for assessing enterprise limitations of an existing solution? Assessing enterprise limitations, I'm going to read you the definition. Provide insights into the performance of a solution in relation to the value that it brings. So which stakeholders? Would it be the customer, sponsor, implementation SME, business architect, regulator, sponsor, project manager, domain SME, end user, project manager, regulator, customer, or customer, sponsor, domain SME, and regulator? First of all, let's say, is regulator in that list?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think it
think
is.
so.
Yes.
Okay. That means we can eliminate this one.
And
Mhm.
I think that we don't really need the
Customer.
customer. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we can eliminate this one as well. And this one, oh my goodness, it just leaves B. Is B the right
Yeah, let's
answer?
go for it. What?
Customer is in the
Customer,
list.
In there.
yeah.
Why?
So why would we
Okay.
need a customer?
Well, let me tell you, I've got this handy dandy thing I can tell you. So assessing enterprise limitations, and I've got to jump to another tab.
But it's
Uh,
kind of weird because it also lists end user, so which could be the same thing as a customer, but
Actually, customer, sometimes we might think it like as an external actor or users, but
Mhm.
customers are they're part they can be part of the enterprise. I mean, our employee,
right,
different departments, different
Uh,
divisions, they are our customers.
we call
right.
them in the real
In-
world we do, but in the BABOK, if they're internal to the organization, they're end users. If they're external to the organization, they're customers.
There we
Okay.
go.
The BABOK just says it's because customers interact with the organization in the use of the solution. So that
So
one.
for this particular task, I'm going to pull this over so you can see it. Well, maybe I'm going to.
Page 181 and 2.
Okay, this says that for this task, customers are people directly purchasing or consuming the solution who may interact with the organization in the use of the solution. That's their job in this particular task, which doesn't tell me a whole lot really.
So then can we think it like this way, Kasi, that if an enterprise didn't do the customer evaluation, if they don't know their customer, so this is the enterprise limitation. Why you don't know your customers? Now you build a solution for your customer, and your customers are not able to use it. So it is the enterprise limitation. It was your responsibility to understand and build the solution for your customer or make it easy. You should have done a user experience design or a solution.
You're right. The
Yeah.
definition for assess enterprise limitations is determining how factors external to the solution are restricting the value realization. So let's say you create a fantastic new phone, and you've got people who have hearing problems and they can't use a phone very well. If that's your customer, your solution could be awesome, but they're not going to use it.
It will be a great solution for the developers. They know how to use it.
Developers, the project managers, those people are excited about it. The customers, they could not, that's not what they needed. To which task is assess solution limitations closely linked, including the fact that it can actually be performed concurrently. So what other tasks could be performed concurrently as assess solution limitations? And they're closely linked. Would it be risk analysis and management, assess stakeholders, assess enterprise limitations, or conduct elicitation? Well, let's eliminate conduct elicitation
Because that's
because
usually done
Yeah,
already.
it's
makes
not
sense.
doesn't make sense there.
No.
Mhm.
Is there a task called assess stakeholders?
No.
So we are in
No.
assess enterprise limitations or risk analysis and management. Is that a task anywhere?
No.
Not, no.
Pretty sure we're here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If assess enterprise limitation, if it's to determine how factors external to the solution are restricting value, that's everything except internal to the solution, right?
Yep,
So it's not really
exactly.
enterprise limitations, it's assess
It's-
all other limitations.
Think of it as a
Right.
diagram with the solution here and everything outside of that being considered. So it's customers, the weather, the economy, the culture. If Bob has heartburn and if John is about to retire, I mean, it's all going to be considered. Okay, we are 30 minutes early. We have a choice. We can start talking about those of you who have not filled out your application. I think that might be beneficial. Or we can do some more questions. I'm going to take a vote. Everybody who wants to talk about filling out your application, raise your hand. Nobody.
Okay, so I think I've got mine done, but I think you should look it over just to make sure.
Okay. Do you want to share it with everybody right now, or do you want to make time with me by myself?
Take time with you by yourself.
Come on, Robin.
Well, I tell you what, Robin, do you have specific questions that you could just ask without showing examples?
Actually, no, I think it's pretty much because we kind of went over it as our team. We went over it and kind of filled out anything that we thought was missing.
Oh, I have a question. Can employer and reference, do they have to be different people?
No, they don't have to be the different people. You can use the same person as
Oh, you
I worked
can.
with this guy
There you
and
go.
he's my reference.
All right.
Okay, that works.
Sandy, was our
Just-
question because you would be my reference, but you're
Yeah.
also taking the exam?
Well, I don't know.
Would that be
That's
okay?
because no, I think it's because I can fill it out. Yeah, that they won't know.
our
They won't see that
manager,
stuff
though.
together. But I'm
They
the
don't care.
manager, and I can also be your
Right.
reference.
So Sandy can be your manager. She could be your reference. She can be your employer. She can be a training provider. That's not going to be a problem.
And a fellow test
Okay.
studier.
Yeah.
Fellow CBAP studier. That's right. Let me just give you a few reminders. You need to put in more hours than you need, just to be safe. If you have anything that was not a business analyst position, be sure you word it as a business analyst. If it was a project manager, sometime in the past, they have actually said, no, you can't use that because you use terms like, establish milestones and manage timelines. I mean, that's very project management, right?
Right.
What
and
you can say those
WBS
same
and all
things
those
as a
things, yeah.
business analyst, right? Coordinated team activities to achieve goals and manage communication. You're doing the same thing. It's just different terminology.
So
Right.
that's what it wants in the description under where it says work description. It doesn't just want the word government.
Well,
I can share my
Okay.
screen. How about if I
No,
share my screen,
okay, yeah.
Sandy?
Your screen.
Well, I'm
Okay.
glad you brought that up because that would have been wrong.
I'll share my screen and then if we can see any discrepancies.
We promise not to blab.
Well,
Robin, while you're looking, I just want to tell Bob that I will learn your Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta too. I used to work for Disney a long time ago, so it was Ariel, Belle, Cinderella, and Disney. So it's in my head now. But because of you, I will learn the new one.
Those are actually good. There are 26, obviously, in the standard international phonetic alphabet, and they're chosen so they're as unlike each other and as distinguishable as possible.
I
So,
actually
Rob-
heard somebody once say E as in
There we
Eunice.
go.
I'm like, no,
Oh,
you can't
that's
say E as in Eunice.
Okay, I stopped sharing, Robin, so you can share it more easily.
It's
I encourage people
actually for echo.
to learn the entire phonetic alphabet, because whenever you're talking to somebody on the phone and you have to convey letters, it is so much easier if, especially if they know the phonetic alphabet too. It's butter. Okay,
Can you
so
see it?
I see your requirements. Okay,
Okay,
let's go to the
here's
next page. Irina says it's used in aviation. If y'all didn't know, Irina is a pilot and she can land the plane.
cool.
oh wow.
Very cool.
They use it as Alpha, Beta, Charlie, Bravo, and yeah, and all the rest.
Yep, and you can't use Disney in it. I mean, they
International pilots all use English and they all use this alphabet.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
So, Robin, I'm going to tell you things I think you can improve. For your description, I'd like for you to put in 2 sentences. That's about the number of characters that you're going to have ability to put in.
Is
and
it too
put
long?
in- no, it's fine. And you don't. The work history is much more important than this.
Real
Okay.
quick, for the description, that one of the other course we have a IIBA course code. Is that
Okay.
sufficient?
Do you want
I
just
would
that
put
instead?
the title and the facilitator or the speaker and any course codes or whatever you want to
Okay.
put there. But what you want it to do is to be able to stand on its own. That's good. That's good. As I said, you only have about enough space for about 2 sentences. For this one,
Yeah.
identifying it thoroughly, and don't forget to put in the organization website. It makes it look more legit. Don't forget to put in your start date,
Oh, got that
end
on
date,
here.
and your total number of hours. That's all super important.
Okay, so that's in
Okay.
there. I do got to put your organization website. I didn't realize I did not have that in there. I thought I did. Okay.
It's not hard to
Missed that
find.
one. Yeah, I got that one. I know where to get that one. And then this is the work history.
Okay. Let's see. You got your start date, end date. Let me see your descriptions.
Descriptions.
I didn't know where to put descriptions.
Work description is right
I know.
here.
Okay, so
I
that
did
was
the
my
same
job.
as you, Robin.
it's not asking for your title there. It's asking for you to do something like um city government with the goal of whatever. For instance, I'll tell you what I would put if I were doing my current job. Decommissioning mainframe and rewriting all regulatory reports to other technologies. Something like that. It's just like explaining what my focus of my projects are. If you have multiple projects, it's hard to do that. So make it
Yeah.
a higher level. So for you, you can give a brief, like you are county government, and what are your focuses?
Public works and attorneys.
Okay.
Well,
So
the
what do you?
focus is
what-
helping find
Solutions and
analyzing requirements to find solutions to meet the county's business needs.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
what we do.
So you can say that. You can say to meet business needs for public works and attorneys, with the goal of, you can quantify something if you want to, 80% satisfaction.
Analyze the solutions. And requirements. For business business objectives.
Yeah, to aid the business in meeting the needs of the citizens. Wow.
Well, for public works, I was just going to put for requirements for business objectives for public works and the attorneys, county attorneys. All righty.
They will love that.
Attorneys. And I'll get my spelling correct in here.
You can do that later.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Whatever.
Okay, very good. And so you need to do that for each one of your roles.
So
And
the senior customer support specialist, basically it was analyzing and providing solutions for hardware and software for the enterprise, the county enterprise.
that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. Does anybody else have a job that they want to run the definition by us and see if it sounds Babok-y?
I'll come up with some and then send them your way.
Okay, that works.
But not
So
yet.
whole
It's-
purpose of us putting the spreadsheet together was to make it easy for you to figure out your number of hours for the job and then to distribute that amongst the knowledge areas without having a deficit or a surplus. And then to also identify your total number of hours by knowledge area, because one of your requirements is that you have to have, I think, 900 hours in 4 different knowledge areas. And so we wanted to be sure you were easily able to see how many hours you had in each knowledge area to be sure you exceeded the requirements. Does that make sense?
Surplus isn't necessarily a bad thing, though, right?
A surplus, well,
I've been there for 12 years, so I mean, I have a surplus.
no, I meant
Yeah.
surplus like you have 1,000 hours at that job, but then you've got 900 hours allocated to knowledge areas. You've got a surplus, and that's not good. You want it to
No,
balance.
okay, I meant the other. I have extra. I didn't use all my hours because not all of
That's
my
fine.
hours are applicable to.
Yeah, well, you
I just put the full
last
amount.
2 years. You can use your jobs that you were paid for. You can use volunteer that you were not paid for. You can use entrepreneurial efforts that you were not paid for or made money, depending on how you did. You can use
Okay.
things that you did to help people that weren't official volunteers. You can use all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Does anybody have a question about something that you think you might be able to use, but you're not sure of?
I just had a quick question about the professional development hours.
Yes, Stephen.
When you're listing the contact person, should that be the instructor or like let's say Bluegrass was the sponsor for the training, would you put down the Bluegrass contact or would it be the person who was conducting the presentation?
It could be either one. In the case of bluegrass specifically, I would put down the bluegrass contact. But I would still be listing the person that conducted the presentation or the training somewhere in your, maybe in the title.
Okay.
Does that make sense? For
Yeah.
instance, if Yulia Koroncheko was presenting with the bluegrass chapter, I would put that was the bluegrass presented this, and here's the title, and then for the contact or the website and stuff like that, I'd put the bluegrass information there
Okay. Thank you.
because they're the one who actually put on the event.
Can we claim, another question, like articles as an experience?
There,
Write article.
you know, I saw that the other day and then I couldn't find that to save it. I need to go find it again. Whenever you volunteer to present, for instance, Irina, tonight, I think it's like 10 points of experience because you presented at a chapter event. I don't remember exactly what it is. I will create an article on LinkedIn and y'all can all read it there. How's that? Yes, Bob.
I think the standard is claim the number of hours it took to prepare for the talk. And the standard is kind of 10 to prepare. for an hour-long talk. That's usually how long mine take. I've taken longer, but I always claim 10. And if it's a 40-minute talk, I might claim something like 7.
Oh, thank you.
Bob, I think if it is 40 minutes presentation, you might need even more hours to prepare.
Now, well, it's proportional to how long you blab, right?
Makes
Is it
sense.
And what
Is it
language
beneficial?
At some point, 10 is really the most you do for any one activity for prepping a talk with that. But
Is there any benefit to putting in extra hours?
I would
Because
always
I have presented at IIBA before, but I guess I could put that in there because it's easy for them to verify.
I would
Yeah, she
I
did.
like to put in extra hours just because that way if they ever okay, so
Question.
I've told you before that about 20% of you, you're going to turn in your application and they're going to fully audit. They're going to check every single thing. About 20% of you, they're going to check your references. And then the rest of you, they're not even going to check. So just in case you're in the first 20% and they look at it and they say, well, we can't verify this one. You want to have enough on there where they don't have to come back and say, sorry, you got to submit again. You know, don't put yourself through that.
talking about different things also. So there's hours of experience overall, hours of experience in the knowledge areas, and then there's training hours. So those are separate. So make sure we're trying to apply these things appropriately. So this class is in theory 35 hours, right?
Actually, we hit 37 with the schedule
All right.
away.
So there
I know.
we go.
Yeah.
So you should get all your hours just from doing this. Now, when you go to maintain your cert every 3 years, that's when it gets fun. And that's when giving presentations and so on comes into play. Half the reason I give presentations is to maintain my cert. I mean, if I help people, that's great.
Okay, so I just found a article from the Bluegrass chapter and I pasted the important stuff into the chat. So let me just share the screen. We can talk through it.
And there was a whole PDF on the IIBA site about how you do all this stuff.
Yep. So note, it says each chapter program meeting for the chapter is worth 1.5 hours. Their meetings are an hour and a half. So that's why it's 1.5 hours. It's basically hour for hour, 1 credit per 1 hour. If you speak at meetings or events, you get 10 CDUs. And being part of a discussion panel, like I share something with somebody else, I only get half of that. So I get 5. Volunteer for a leadership role, you get 1 CDU for each hour of work in the role. So I get about 10 hours a week. And then you get another extra 10 CDUs for each 6 months of the role. So I'm about to hit 100 then. Provide BA services, community or charitable organization. This is your own reckoning, right? Each hour of work for a legally recognized not-for-profit organization in the community is worth another CDU. So you get all of these.
But those are continuing development, so that's not for the application. That's just going forward to maintain it.
Well, you're basically getting the same thing. You can use the same measurements, I believe, for your professional development work. There is another.
No, you
No?
can't. Those are
Okay, I'm wrong.
separate. That's what I was trying to get at. In order to sit for the test, you have to have formal training. And that's either by an approved education provider like Watermark or Adaptive. I used Adaptive, or a registered chapter, which is what we are. So those are separate, and they're entered separately and maintained separately in your profile on the IIBA site.
Okay. This is an example of how AI is lying to us. This is using
Oh, look at
this
that. Yeah.
article, and it's taking this information from down here as CDUs.
Well, but CDUs are one thing, professional development hours for the first part are
PD.
the
Right, but-
other half.
For this measurement, attending chapter meetings, you get 1.5 CDUs. That's what it was saying on the article for PDUs. And that's
No.
specific to the Bluegrass
Oh.
chapter. Okay, so for this one, I just dropped this link in the chat.
Initial search.
For the
And
initial certification there.
certificate handbook. No, I don't want to buy it. I just want to read it. I'm not logged in. That's why it's doing that. Let me log in. I used to say, watch people type in their password as a little asterisk. So I go, I have the same password. They didn't think it was funny. Okay. CDUs. Go back to that other one and certification handbook.
CDUs. Are we
For
trying?
webinars.
We're looking for PDUs though.
Yeah, right. PDUs.
Okay.
Not called PDUs though. They're professional development hours.
I believe this our study group can be
PDUs
counted
is
towards PDUs.
for project management.
Yeah.
It's the
Okay.
PMI's word for renewing your cert. And then Scrum has a totally different. So everybody's got their own crazy acronym.
Okay, guys, I will put this together and get an article out before the end of Friday so that y'all can have it, and it will be on LinkedIn. That way everybody can have it. Okay.
Should
Okay.
be PDFs on the IIBA site.
I know, but I'm not finding it.
Okay, does anyone need those PDO hours? I can share a very good course from Coursera. And also, meanwhile, I believe our study group can be counted towards that if anyone needs it.
Yes.
I actually
Yeah,
I found
well-
it on IIBA site. Here, I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Chat. I went to the CBAP and it says what qualifies for professional development hours.
Thank you. Okay, let's look at it. What?
Third one down. So up 3, 4. Yeah.
There.
Yeah. 35 hours, must align with the knowledge areas, be facilitated and assessed by an instructional leader, have measure learning objectives directly applicable to the role, provide opportunities for students to ask questions, interact with the material, and apply their knowledge and skills. I think y'all got that. And then we're going to go
Yeah.
here. Nope, that's 2 different courses. That doesn't tell me everything I want here.
But a formal course run by a chapter, which is what you're doing, that counts.
Right.
And
Well, we
you
know that
can,
you get one to one, but there's somewhere that it talks about individual self-directed learning. You get certain credit. There's all kinds of stuff like that, and I don't know where it's at. So I'll find it. And
like
y'all
I
just
said, there's a longer PDF somewhere.
somewhere. If y'all find it, send it to me so that I can not be searching on my own too. Okay, anything else we want to talk about tonight?
I would like to ask something. If everyone wants to vote, do you feel about this knowledge area? Shall we go and mix it with another knowledge area next week? If everyone feels confident, next week, shall we combine it with the another knowledge area? For instance, can we mix chapter 8 and 7 to solve it together?
Okay, so next week Esther's going to be facilitating,
Okay.
and I don't have any problem with telling her to do 7 and 8 together, but I want to see what y'all think. I feel like you have a really good handle on chapter 8.
So
But
we can
you
maybe
gotta
start
vote.
voting. Do you have a voting option here? Do you have that feature on Zoom that we can vote?
Let's see, notes.
So
I don't see a way to. Y'all can raise your hands if you want to do 7 and 8 next week.
okay, okay.
I'm
Rise.
going to abstain because I won't be here next week.
Yeah, I won't be
Yeah.
as well because we'll be
Okay.
at the conference.
That's fine. So you can abstain. So two are not voting. I've got 1 vote for yes. I've got 2 votes for yes.
I can do both ways. It's
I got a
Wonderful.
thumbs up and 1 in there. Y'all got 4 votes for yes, and I think that is a majority.
But still, we can wait for our friends. I mean, personally, I feel like that. I didn't know that you guys are not going to be next week here.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to be at a conference, and I get to meet some of these good folks in person. So that's going to be wonderful. We might even, learn something together. That's going to be
Right.
pretty neat.
For any of you who haven't been to the BBC conference, I'm hoping it's in Orlando again next year, or at least in Florida. It seems to go to Florida every other year. But
hope
if you
not.
have a chance to go because it's
They're
amazing.
good. Yeah.
I
It's
think
so much
wanna go
fun.
to Phoenix like you guys.
It's so good. That's all.
getting to be with other business analysts and all being excited about business analysis, it's like a high. I don't know what it is. We get excited. We made commercials. They handed me the ball, the little orange ping pong ball that said analysis everywhere, and they said, "Do you do analysis outside of business analysis?" And I'm like, "Yes." Have you ever
course.
babysat somebody else's 4-year-old? She said, "Come here, you're doing a commercial." And I did a commercial. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just telling her how I do business analysis whenever it's not business. And 30 of us did that, and it wasn't hard. It was fun. We were just excited about being with each other. And the presenters, half of us were presenting, I think. And there are people that you see every year. Some of the people that you see every year, like Fabricio, I had somebody tell me Fabricio is the nicest guy. I only see him at this conference every year. And every year he smiles, waves at me, and he remembers my name. And that's all he needed. He didn't need a long conversation. He was just like, I feel like I'm a person because Fabricio does that for me. But there's a whole lot of people there like that. So yeah, if you get a chance to go, yes, Bob.
Just so you know, there's a whole nother series of conferences for project managers and BAs. It's a project summit and business analysis world. That has its own cast of characters you see at every conference, particularly here in Orlando. And I always get to go for free, so that's nice. But that's another, and they do them all over North America, Vancouver, Chicago, Toronto, New York, Boston, Orlando, probably elsewhere. And there
Basically,
are
up to place to
opportunities
place.
to speak. It's a whole nother thing. Maybe one of those would be as valuable to attend and would be beneficial once you get your sort, or even before.
Even before. Okay, one last thing in our last minute. Irina, you said you're going to be presenting for the IIBA. Where is that and when?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
You said something about presenting for the IIBA in July?
It's for podcast. Yeah, was hold on.
2nd July, that's all we know.
So I will share with you the next time. Yeah, I have it in my calendar.
Okay, okay. We'd like to know
It
about
will
it.
be live. It's every, I think, every Tuesday or Thursday at 10 p.m. It's 1 hour. And
Okay.
this lady, she's based in Charlotte, same as me, and works at IIBA. Yeah.
Oh, how nice. Okay. I'd like to find out more about that. Maybe I could come on and talk about something interesting someday.
Yeah, absolutely. I will share with you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, guys, I will
Yeah.
see most of you in 2 weeks. No, in 3 weeks. Next week I'm going to be at BBC. The week after I'm going to be in Cincinnati meeting my new coworkers, and they have a 75th company anniversary, and they're taking us all out to a park with a band and all kinds of stuff. So I won't be here. Esther will be here, and then I'll catch up with y'all after that.
You
Okay?
enjoy, yeah, and we will learn.
Okay. See you
Yeah.
later.
See you.
Bye, guys.
Good night.